Well, good morning, everyone. I'm so happy to be with you in this virtual way. I really envy you that you are there in Barcelona, but let's hope that one day we will be able to meet each other in person. I hope that this it's not lecture, it's going to be more presentation and talk about how we can think about improvement of accessibility and inclusion in museums and also in the heritage field, because it is our obligation. We as a cultural workers or workers in tourism or cultural management, we have to be aware of the fact that it is one of our mission to make it possible to fulfill basic human rights. And one of the basic human rights is to participate in the social and cultural life. So you will see some of the pictures that I have prepared for you through this presentation, but also there are many things that I'm going to mention and talk about. Sometimes when we talk about access and inclusion, we think that maybe we are not skilled enough, that we are not educated enough for that, and that we need a lot of money to improve access or inclusion in our museums, institutions, on the fields, at some specific cultural sites. As you're all managers or participating in management of specific cultural routes, it is also important to think about some basic informations. I hope that you can hear me well. Thank you all for being with me, for participating in this presentation, and also for warm welcome and introduction. As you can see, one of the biggest museums, this photo of the Metropolitan Museum in New York is not an example of how something is not accessible, but it is an example of wonderful entrance, big building, huge stairs, and it can be the first impression someone gets that when comes before the museum. It happens also when we are coming to some specific cultural site, that we see how grandiose it is, how big it is, how large it is, how many stairs that are there to walk, to climb, how many different ways to come or visit some, for example, archaeological sites. And we are tired, we are pregnant, we have kind of a some kind of injury on our heel or knee or something. So it doesn't have to be necessary that we have some kind of that we are disabled or people with disabilities, depending on which terminology you use. In UK, it is disabled people. In United States, usually it is people with disability. But I, for example, don't have a sense of smell. So it makes me disabled person because I am not able to, my sensory experience is disabled. So I cannot feel the smell, I cannot feel the fire, I cannot feel sometimes if food is not good. So it can be dangerous. And depending on our stages in life, as I mentioned, we can be in the blessed state of our life, be a pregnant woman, but being a visitor or tourist at the moment, it can be difficult. So when you come in front of this kind of building, you can say, I am capable of coming in. So one of the first things we need to think about when we have, or when we run our sites or our institutions, is that people just in front of the entrance can feel free. Also heavy doors, a lot of stairs, many different elements, architectural elements can be a barrier for people visiting and can be not motivated for someone to come in to visit or to engage in any event that is happening. Also pavement, asphalt on the street, many different levels that we need to cross. So we just need to think about how we can really give a true welcome on the beginning. So, welcome to the magical world of the museums. You know that many museum institutions have wonderful buildings and wonderful architecture, such this one, Guggenheim Museum as well in New York. Sorry, but all of these institutions, even my museum that I work in Eastern Serbia, is thinking about accessibility and trying to improve it. So also, welcome to the magical world of spaces of cultural heritage. This is an example of Belgrade Fortress on the conjunction of River Danube and Sava. And it is a really magnificent place. It is historical, it has layers and layers, even from prehistorical time through Roman time to Turkish Ottoman rule, and also different periods of contemporary history or modern history from 19th and 20th century. And it is hard to manage this kind of institutions. Being a curator, cultural worker, even as a director of a museum, I understood and I experienced difficulties that we can come across, because just being and dealing with heritage is a sensitive thing. We are dealing with ages and centuries of our culture, and we need to be aware, especially with the protection, preservation, sustainable use, management of the sites or institutions. But we also have to think about how we have to, for example, use it in a sustainable way, and how we can be open and friendly and visitor friendly to everyone. Accessible heritage is a topic for today. Since I've been already introduced, I just want to thank you once again for participating, for inviting me in this second transnational training for trainers, WalkEUR Creative Europe program. I wish that after this project, and I hope that it will be the case, that you will pass the process of improvement on any possible level. So this is going to contribute to you as well. So as I mentioned, how can we be more accessible and more inclusive? You can imagine this kind of situation. You can imagine people coming to our sites or our museums, facing the thing that maybe they can feel not well educated to experience something that is in front of them, that are not well prepared to understand the contemporary art, for example, or that they are not well educated to understand some religious or historical paintings on the wall. In that way, our art and our heritage is not accessible to someone. And also, it is not inclusive. For example, on this painting, on this picture, you can see stairs as a physical barrier. And maybe a visitor is using a wheelchair or helping tool or stick or something, walking helping tool. And it is not possible for him or her or them to climb the stairs and visit some specific parts. And in that case, I will jump from many different elements of accessibility and inclusion, but in that case, we have to be clever, we need to be open-minded, we need to use technology. If we cannot, since I had a case, I am working in a museum that has 3 historical buildings protected by law. So it means that it is not possible to make architectural interventions on the very building. But there are many useful things that we can use. And sometimes, in many cases, they're not really expensive. Sometimes you just need advice of technical person, of architect, to give you one of the solutions. We can use mobile mounting ramps. We can use touch screen monitors. We can use tablets, mobile phones, even small QR code on the wall before the stairs can be wonderful helping tool, because now it is absolutely not expensive. It is no budget moment. So you just need to create a QR code and connect it, actually generate the QR code and connect it with a content on your website or a platform or in your application. So basically just scanning the QR code will provide a content or virtual tour or 360 degrees presentation of the building or of the object that you want to present or the site in total. It can be just a video guide or just audio guide. So it will also help, for example, blind person to just feel the atmosphere or to get basic explanation. Of course, in that way, you can also use many different languages. So you made something that is physically inaccessible, just accessible and inclusive enough. So it doesn't have to be a lot of money. We just need to be open-minded and think about many things. It is just truly one small step for man and one giant leap for mankind. As you know, it is Neil Armstrong and it really happened and it can happen to us. And what is important to have in mind when you talk about improvement of access and inclusion, it is that working on improvement of access and inclusion, you're not working only for disabled people. You're not improving the quality of your work only for some specific target groups. Everything you do to improve access and inclusion is 100% improving your work, your institution, your capacity, your site, your route. So it's for all. It has to be for all because it is in the human nature to use senses. And previously, sense of smell, sense of taste, and sense of touch was something that was primary in our behavior and our process of learning. You just have to observe a small kid or child, when it plays. They usually put their toys into mouth. They usually smell it. They even put it on their head. They're connecting. They're feeling it. So if it is possible, try to think of every sense we have and use as humans, because it will improve our quality. So we'll talk about some examples and I will mention it. Accessibility should not be something that we declare that we are obliged to do. Accessibility is something, because of what I've just said, that it is for all. It has to be something that we believe in. And it is based, and let's say first, what accessibility means. To live independently and to participate fully in all aspects of life. And it is a strong and powerful message, and we as humans have right to participate to fulfill our lives, and also to participate in social and cultural life. To ensure we as cultural workers should be working on ensurement of access on equal basis with others to the physical environment, to transportation, to information and communication, and to other facilities and services open or provided to the public, both in urban and in rural areas. So it also means that if we are working in rural areas, we have to think about the way to communicate our message or our heritage with people that are living there. Of course, another element of UN Convention, Article 30, says that it targets participation in cultural life, recreation, leisure, and sport. And we have the right to take part on equal basis in social and cultural life. I am repeating that, but we have to believe in that. It is one of the basic human rights. To enjoy access to cultural materials in all accessible formats. That's why I mentioned that we can really, in the 21st century, try to find a way, even very cheap solutions, even no budget solution, to create accessible formats, to enjoy access to places for cultural performances or services. So, of course, we have a variety of international regulations, conventions, and other legal instruments. So we have this mentioned Universal Declaration of Human Rights. You have Convention of the Rights of Persons with Disabilities. And also you have the strategy for the rights of persons with disability. It is on the European level. I am sure that you're all aware of that. My country, unfortunately, even though it is geographically and physically part of Europe and used to be a part of Europe, unfortunately is not a member of European Union, but still we are following European conventions, and Serbia is a state, as a republic, is accepting also this kind of signing these conventions. So this is quite a new thing. It is just a follow-up of the previous strategy, but I really motivate you to go through it, to see it, because on many different levels, it really provides and gives directions towards which you should be moving on and developing as well. So of course, we all have our national laws and policies and standards and recommendations. That's why I also, again, encourage you to go through the variety of laws that you have on your local level. I was not sure who are also all of the participants coming in from which countries, but I understand that, of course, you have this European element, conventions, and then national laws. You also have, and you can always look through other documents such as American ADA document or UK conventions and guidances. I listed, this is the third link that I listed here on this slide, is the quite new guidance on accessibility, and it is for the public sector, and I believe many of you are working in the public sector, and it gives wonderful instructions how we should use websites and other digital tools in order to be more accessible and to be inclusive. So when you have time, feel free to visit these sites. And as I mentioned, museums should be open for everyone, for audience, for visitors, for listening, for learning, adapting, changing, improving, implementing. We are also not only very firm structures and heritage that is ages or centuries old. We should be also a living element of our society. And this is a yard of our museum. And I was really thinking a lot, how can visitors see our museum if these heavy iron gate doors are actually closed or just semi-open? So we decided that we should open our arms, iron arms, and say, this is a warm welcome. We were also thinking about pavement and how to go into the yard and how to visit museum. It is protected by the law. So this is something that is reversible. So we did it and tried to make it accessible as it is possible in physical way. Of course, there are many different examples, and I have provided and I have sent my presentation to the organizers. So if you need any of these links, of course, you can find some of them for yourselves. But these are very good examples that are one of the ways to learn from the best. And I think that the last two on this slide, or last three on this slide, can be quite interesting for you because of the accessible tourism, because of the cultural roots should be also part of cultural tourism, and that also the League of Historical and Accessible Sites. I'm sure that you know all of that, and many of you are probably a part of this association. But there are also very nice guidances that are provided online, so you can also check them and see what are the elements, and they're quite practical. I must say, I was checking each of these links before putting in this web presentation, PowerPoint presentation, and they're really useful. I have to tell you that even though I work for 20 years in the museum and cultural heritage sector, I have been learning a lot every single day of my life, working career especially. And just 10 maybe 15 years ago, I started thinking and working on improvement of, let's say, more inclusion than accessibility, because I was not really aware of of the laws, of the practices. And I started to consult local laws and conventions on European level. And I didn't list it here, but one of the most important laws in Serbia, and I know that it is the case in many other countries in Europe, is to consult the construction law about building, engineering, architecture. Depending in each state, it has different name. This law actually provides many important technical standards that you should be following and try to follow. So I wanted to say that it is a learning process, and it is not a bad thing to ask something. Always consult representatives of the people, of associations of people with disability. Always consult psychologists, pedagogues. In Serbia, it is defectolog, so anthropologist even. So you can consult many people to help you when you want to check or prepare your program, or that you want to create atmosphere that is more accessible and more inclusive. I am working in Eastern Serbia, but I'm a member of the Balkan Museum Network that works in the region, even wider than the Balkan itself. And we have a specific group, Balkan Museum Access Group, and I'm a member of that group. And we have been provided with a 3-year up to 5 years long period of learning and education with the British experts. But it was also very nice that we had a chance to listen to other colleagues, that we were a group of 10 people from different countries, and we could exchange our experience, thoughts, and doubts about whether something is good or not. So it is also a process of learning, but it is worth every single moment. And when you realized how things are improving and how people in general, again, I mentioned not only disabled people, but people in general, how they enjoy what you have provided for them. That is the best moment in our careers, that when we see that we have provoked emotion, that we have created specific atmosphere, that we have provided access and inclusion, that is truly a huge, huge success. So, as I mentioned, these are some colleagues, our educators from the United Kingdom, our colleagues from the region, and this is how we started. You can also search for the Balkan Museum Access Group on the internet, and you can see that we have many tools and many publications in different languages that you can also consult. What is important about these publications is that they're all based on the experience of the people working in the field of cultural heritage. So these are examples of the projects, of some episodes, some processes that we came through, so you can use them. I really encourage you to also visit the Balkan Museum Network site and search for the Balkan Museum Access Group and publications, and you can also find tools there. Sorry. One very important thing when you approach access and inclusion, especially when coming from the cultural heritage field, is to use social instead of medical model. And you can see on the slide that medical model is talking about individual. Medical model is asking very unpolitely, tell me what is wrong with you? Tell me what is your diagnosis? Really? Should we ask something like that? Really, we don't need to know the diagnosis to think about what is there that we can do for someone. We don't have to ask for the very personal and intimate information. It is just not good. Instead of doing that, approaching with a medical model, we should use social model. We are talking about environment in total, in a whole. What is our environment? In which environment, in what kind of environment we are working? Let's think about ground level practical things. Are we on a hill? Are we on the flat lands? Are we having many stairs? How are people reacting? Do we have any kind of information, signalization, many different things? So we can talk about our environment. We can talk about us. Where are the barriers you should ask someone approaching you with any kind of difficulty and problem? Where are the barriers? What should I do to minimize the barriers so you can enjoy our heritage? What you can only then ask for a practical information. So do you need any help? Is this site or museum too large for you? You need to visit it in several occasions. Or it is okay for you to prepare a chair, stool, or something like that so you can rest a little bit. These are things that can be truly helpful and should be implemented in the practices. So you can see on the left side of the screen, we are not talking about stairs. We are not staring at people. We are talking about stairs, elevators, pavements, path trails, pedestrian trails. We are talking about us. We are not staring at other. That is very important. So we can start from the practical thing. When you approach your site, when you approach your museum or any monument that you want to present, is it accessible? Can all of people, mother, father with small child, with chairs, wheelchairs, the old people, can we really come to the object that we want to present? Or when you say, okay, I have a parking for disabled people and someone else is using it. And it's not a question of, I am a disabled person, I need a parking space. We all need a parking space when we are traveling by car, but parking space should not be used by others. And parking space should provide more space than usual parking space for car. As you can see on the left side, it has to have additional half or meter. It is actually 1 meter that should be added to the parking because of the manipulation, going out, taking wheelchair out, or whatever. And also, we will also so often see this wheelchair person using a sign, and disability is not only about using wheelchair. Disability is not only using it's not only physical thing. It can be many other things. Also, when we talk about that, that's why I mentioned the symbol. When you are preparing your site, your museum, you should think about, for example, how can someone approach your facility or your site? Do you have enough space for the physical manipulation, for movement? Do you have a specific parking space? Is it well presented? Do you have signalization? And what is also important in many situations, because of the architecture or historical value of the building, it can happen that entrance for disabled people, for example, using wheelchair, is on the right, left side, or even on the back of the building. What would you feel like if someone would tell you, because you're a blonde or you're a curly hair person, we think you should go behind and use that entrance. We should go back to the beginning. It's not a warm welcome. So when you think about all those elements, think about universal criteria or principles of the universal design. It is very simple. It is very plain. Even me, if not being a designer, I understand it. How big the font should be, how clear the font should be, how clear and short message should be. So elements of the universal design are something that you should always implement when talking about and thinking about information, signature, materials, printed materials, or even websites. There are many standards for the websites that are helping and improving accessibility, and they're really not expensive, and they're working a lot. So we should think about access for all, not only the wheelchair users, also about old people, pregnant women, people that have injury at the moment, people that are blind, or people with hearing disabilities. So there are many things. We should talk about using a braille letter, using sounds that are helping in our moving, or also using a sound for audio guides, of course, in different languages, using a sign language, interpreters, or videos for people that are having hearing disabilities. As I mentioned, there are many ways that we can communicate our heritage. Of course, on the on the right side, you can see many very practical tools for equipping toilets, because if we are accessible and people cannot use toilets, then we are just kind of not accessible enough. So of course, these are basic physical needs. So think about possibility to also accommodate or create a space or accessible toilets. In new buildings, in buildings that are created in modern times, usually we don't have this kind of problem, but we can have this kind of problem on, for example, archaeological site or in old rural buildings. Think about the possibility how you should improve it, or is it at least one restroom that you can accommodate or adjust. So, as I mentioned, many people actually use, for example, in our gallery, we have mounted a ramp that is a mobile. And we also have these mobile ramps that can be transferred as a suitcase in one hand and can be positioned in situations when we have a small difference between the height of pavement, for example, or path, and other floor. So you can see here, mother is using for her trolley with a baby, is using a ramp mobile platform for disabled. So it is really truly helping everyone. So as if we talk about visitors and tourists, as you can see on this picture right above, we have them in many different shapes and sizes. So think about that all the time. Open your eyes and try to feel the heritage you want or site that you want to present. There are many useful tools. And one of the tools we use in our practices is access survey. And we do it in museums, we do it on the sites, and we are actually creating an audit report, but we are talking about different elements. And it is important to think about measurements, sizes, spaces, and also using, if you cannot create, because platforms are very expensive, if you cannot adjust it because of the value of historical site, this kind of a wheelchair is something that is very useful. So you can buy at least one, educate a person to use it, one of the guides or someone who is working on your site, and have it for people that need it. So it will also create a space for more access and more inclusion. Use sign language interpreters, use audio guides. Think about the size of the letters you're putting on your maps. Think about how high they can be mounted. I use glasses, and as we grow older, we need glasses for reading. Think when you put something on the wall, think about the height. It should not never be more than, for example, if we talk about showcases in the museums, or legends on the wall, or signs, signature for tourists, signature. It doesn't have to be tall. So if you have 2 meters high legend or a map, touristic map, can you really read what is there? Or can you truly find that little spot that says, you are here? And if you know where you are the letters big enough so you can read them without getting your glasses? It can be sunny, it can be rainy, so you cannot see using glasses. So think about all these elements. They don't cost a penny. So why are we doing this? We want to evaluate the situation that we are in, our heritage sites. We want to actually make a shift in our minds, in minds of collectives that are working on our heritage sites or in our museums. It should cover everything. It should cover management of the facility, because we had a meeting with the director of a very important Roman archaeological site, and we were asking him, do you know maybe how many visitors or disabled people you have as visitors? And he said, no. No, he said, yes, I know, none. I said, really? Do you want to do something about that? And he said, no, they're not coming. They're not my target group. And then we asked, why do you think they're not coming? And he was like, because just 6 months after that, they created very nice pedestrian roads that are actually good for wheelchair users, for older people. They have created QR codes, an application on a mobile phone with a virtual tour. And suddenly, can you be surprised? They had more than 1,000 people visiting, disabled people visiting site. Even blind people were there to hear the story about the mosaics, and also to touch tactile images of the mosaics. And now they do it regularly. So if you want, and also other people. So if you want to do something, then this kind of evaluation is wonderful for all of us. As I mentioned, I just actually explained what are the benefits and outcomes. And it is also very important to consult, to ask, to collaborate. And when you should get started? Immediately. And how? With people with disability, with associations, with experts. So I just explained everything, and just say that this is a process by which a building or organization is evaluated for accessibility to disabled people. And why we should do it? Because of the human rights, because of our legal obligations, because of our visitor-centered approach, because of the audience development, because of the experienced view of a current situation, or impartial view on the situation that we are in. To prioritize your needs and to create your new strategy, to identify where you should start, or maybe what is the easiest thing you can do, even tomorrow, and to plan another process of change for your heritage site, for your institution. What are the elements to be checked? We should first start with the policies, with the services, with practices, then with building and facilities. Also, we should check information that we are providing, and how do we have organized procedures to help us improve access and inclusion. And here you can see the example of tactile image, the example of the face mask in bronze, and the tactile image in plaster that are provided also on that specific archaeological site. So this is how you can do it. There are many, many different things that you should think about. For example, how are the maps, brochures, websites created? Can we truly understand big, intelligent, curatorial, interpretative materials? Be careful when you use words. Use simple words, use simple sentences. It's not offensive. No one is stupid. You're not assuming someone is not educated, stupid, or I don't know what. But you're sending message that should reach small children, older people, that should reach engineers, artists, agriculture worker, economists, many of people, many different target groups. Think about the design using simple font, simple, clear design techniques and colors. Think about your public tourist maps and signalization. Think about the reception desk. As you can see on this image down, reception desks should have two levels. One is I am a not so tall person. So sometimes really when I go to the hotel reception or somewhere else, or even at the restaurant, bar or desk is too high for me. So I'm like, and it puts you in not so nice situation. So when you think about reception desks, always take care that you have one part that is normal, average size, normal. What is normal? But average size for the standing adult person. But also on the other hand, that you have a lower level for not so tall people, for children, and for people using wheelchairs or other helping tools for walking. So also think about whether you have elevators. If you have them, if you don't have the braille letters inside, or the elevator doesn't have a sound helping you to see where you actually hear where you are, try to involve sound or put the braille legends in the elevators. If you can purchase or buy or find a sponsor for the platform, put it. It is reversible. Think about the pavements. Are there many bumping roads towards your main entrance? Think about them. Do something about that. Think about also the traffic. Information about, for example, touristic signalization. Is there a sign at least 50 meters from your site or institution? Or is there a sign 1 kilometer somewhere far from the site you want to present touristic information that can direct visitor? Is there also information on your website about how people can come to your museum or your site? Is there a parking information, toilet information, accessibility information? You can put it on your website. You can even print it out and hand it to the taxi drivers or touristic offices. So do you have enough operating space for manipulating circulations? Are the corridors enough, large enough, wide enough? Do you have lobbies? Do you have places for rest? What are the doors that you are using? Are they heavy? Do you have gates, iron, chains somewhere to protect your heritage? It is okay, but it can be dangerous and it can be an obstacle. How high are the doorknobs, mechanisms, switches? What kind of commands do we have? So if you have a heavy glass or wooden door, or you have, I don't know, many stairs, and you have this kind of equipment that you can help visitor coming inside, think about putting at least hand iron metal bell, so someone can approach and use a bell, so he can call someone to come and open the door, provide this kind of element, or at least some kind of a telephone number that people can contact you. When we are talking about rural areas, sometimes we don't have internet, we don't have electricity, or it is too hard to manage the infrastructure. But there are some simple elements that we can really use for improvement of access and inclusion. So when we talk about accessible historical route, Usually we have beginning of the end and the end, and they can be circled routes. Think about options that people can leave the route in any moment, at any point they want to, when they get tired, when they don't feel like this is something for them. Make sure that they can leave. Uh, they have to have appropriate guidance, appropriate touristic signalizations, maps, plaques, informations on the buildings. And also when we talk about plaques, we have standard, it has to be like bronze, 40 centimeters big. It has the signature of like UNESCO heritage, protected heritage, something like that. Now we can do with it, we can use plexiglass, we can use other not so expensive materials, we can add QR codes, we can add different languages, we can add braille legends. So it can be many things that will improve your access and inclusion. It's not only about physical accessibility, as I said, it is about intellectual accessibility as well. That's why you have to be simple, clear, approachable. And in that way, people will really, truly have more respect for your work. And it will target many, many different people. You should provide and provoke specific cultural and sensory experience. And when we have that kind of specific cultural and sensory experience, we create emotion. And that emotion is creating a memory. And that is something that we actually sell to people. That is our product when we talk about heritage. Emotion that people bring and the memories, smells, taste, atmosphere is a product that is a result of our work. So you need to provide basic information about the route, and it should be available in many different elements. It should be available like printed, digital, in braille legends, in audio, video formats, tactile formats, on the websites in many different occasions. So information about accessible public facilities on your website, for example, in your brochures or in a tourist office. You can provide materials that are saying, for example, how far is the nearest restaurant, how many hotels you have, are there any toilets in the field on the side, or are they accessible? Are there accessible parkings, resting areas? What are the other cultural sites that you can visit, or institutions that are nearby that are your partners? What are the programs that you're offering? For example, for families, for people that are blind or are having hearing disability. What are the programs that are actually inclusive for everyone? So as I mentioned, this kind of experience is common for all people. It is not a question of people with a disability, and it's not only for them, it is for all. Are there any precise information about the public transportation services? For example, it's not enough to say, yes, there is a bus station, public transportation, or a train station, like 1 kilometer far. You have to tell people and inform them if there are any public transportations that can provide, for example, transport of the trolleys for children, transport for your bicycle, for the biking routes, transport for people using wheelchair. So it can be many different things. And also you can say, on the way from the bus station, there is a hill. Our museum, for example, or site is on the hill. It is steep, or you can say what is the degree of the way that someone has to pass, how many footsteps, for example, or it, because someone is a tall and can be walking fast, and someone is not so tall and has small steps. So it's not enough to say it takes about 5 minutes to reach it. If you cannot tell for sure how far is something in meters or something like that, kilometers, then try to use something that is measurable and more precise than like 10 minutes walk. And it is also necessary when talk about historical routes and museums and sites that you have trained personnel or people that are engaged, experts, guides, translators, interpreters that are ready to accept and to warm welcome all kinds of visitors, as we said, in all shapes and sizes. It is important. And it's not so expensive as well. It just takes time and will. And really, results can be various. It can be a lot of different new partnerships, cooperations, collaborations, new donations, and also it can be many, many, many satisfied visitors. You can see on the left side how blind person is actually feeling and watching, as they say also, tactile image of the mosaic, Roman mosaic. On the other hand, you see blind ladies using a tablet with tactile tastature. So on the other hand, you see the elements of tactile objects that are provided for visitors as well. So it can be many things. Oh, sorry. You can also see how different tactile publications can be provided, and also how one QR code can take you to the website and provide additional information. You can also create virtual tours. For example, here you can see 300, this is our museum, this is our access site. We have website of a museum, but we have one specific, completely different site that is also for disabled people. And it is not only for people with specific, it can be only for me, like using glasses and I don't have them with me, but I can enlarge screen, I can enlarge text. As you can see, it is white text on the black, universal design, is easy to read. You can have this 300-degree virtual tour, you can engage sound, and when you go with cursor or with your mouse over the screen, you have sounds saying, this is the Homeland Museum, this is the City Museum, this is archaeology, this is art, and also you have it as interpreted on sign languages. For example, we have developed 7 mobile, completely free to download applications that are providing interpretation of our heritage, that are providing virtual elements, augmented realities element, providing 3D models, as you can see. And also we have created interactive informative maps on the archaeological site. And when you use your phone, you can use just your camera without downloading app. And when it interacts, it's just augmented reality element. It provides a 3D model of the archaeological fort. So there are many, many things that are not so expensive and can be used. And as you can see, you can create programs, specific programs, helping to interpret, to feel, to engage with your heritage. Here you see blind people sitting on the archaeological site. Now, on this picture, they didn't have specific paths for visitors, pedestrian trails. But now they're using some materials and reversible techniques to create a route for pedestrians that will provide possibility to see mosaics, to see the site, but also it will provide option for disabled people using blind, deaf, or people using wheelchair to use this kind of trails to get to the specific info points when they can have tactile images, audio elements as well. There are beacons that are not so expensive, like I think it's around 15 to 20 euros each, that can be positioned in specific places, and they interact with your mobile app, and they trigger the sound or video. So these are the things that can be used as well. Of course, when you think about development and improvement of access and inclusion, you should always think about workshops and trainings and learning processes. And you should always think about asking a lot of questions. People and groups that you want to target specifically. You need to ask associations of disabled people. You need to ask schools, pedagogists, professors. You should ask architects, designers, experienced colleagues, interpreters, sign language interpreters. For example, in Zagreb, in Croatia, there is a fantastic Tiflological museum. I'm sure that each of you in your country has something like that. So you should also consult, for example, Tiflological museum. Of course, always consult people that are working in the institutions for the protection of cultural heritage. These are the lists of the access surveys we have done, conducted in many, many different museums across the region. And each of these museums also had to run some kind of a site, cultural site, whether it is archaeological, rural, like churches in rural areas, or open air museums. And it helped them a lot to figure out how to improve and work on the access and inclusion. And all of them gave a feedback to us saying it was a wonderful process and it really improved the quality of work we are providing. It was not anything about, we have 100 disabled people coming. It came, it really came, it was a result. But what is the most important is that they had a reaction from each single visitor, and they were very proud of that. Thank you.
So yeah, now thank you very, very much, Milena, for this very, very didactic, very inspiring presentation. I think we have a couple of minutes if somebody wants to start a little conversation, maybe some questions. If you want to do so, maybe sit in this chair so Milena can hear you as well, or shout. Mark, please.
Hi, Milena. Do you listen to me?
Yes, I can hear you.
I think you can see my hands.
I can see your hands.
Okay. So I was searching for the word, ¿cómo se llama protocolo? Okay. Are there any kind of protocol that can help each of us? I mean, in terms of when we are working on the development of new contents, new supports, how we should attend always all these points of views in terms of accessibility from visual, audio visual, mobility, etc.
I'm not sure if I could hear you well, but I can answer like that. Yeah,
he's asking a little bit about if there's a specific protocol, like some guidelines to follow. Is that more or less your question, Mark?
Yes, yes.
Well, regarding design, architecture, and physical improvements, there are, and all of the links that I have provided are actually in connection with some kind of legislation, rules, or advices. It's not a strict protocol because we need to accommodate and adjust. But what we always suggest as kind of experts in this field, we always suggest that you double check everything before printing it, putting it on public, or doing it. So if you want to create material, for example, of course, ask a designer, then check material with your target group. For example, if you have a material that is for blind, go to the Association of Blind People and ask them, explain what you want to do, and ask them to check your material. That's what we were doing for our museum and my colleagues as well. If it is something that should be treating physical barriers, put yourself in other person's shoes or talk to someone that has that kind of difficulty that you think that you will do something about. And also, always try to listen to others' needs. We tend to, as humans, to give advices and to do something that we think that it is good for someone. Are we really sure that something we are doing is good for someone if we never asked? So my answer would be also follow universal design procedures and elements. Ask about regulations, ask about law, double check technical elements, but always consult people you want to talk to, address to. Evaluate.
No, I think it's okay from here. Yeah. So my question actually is regarding the accessible design for digital or virtual tours and digital content development and things. Do you have any experiences like when we consider, for example, accessibility for the digital tools? And of course, there are some, for example, for the access for the archive, there are some institutions that like some of the archive could be public and some archive only private and could not be digitalized, and how you deal with it and how to, I don't know, to...
Thanks for asking that question. It is really important. It should always be on the top of your mind, because, for example, we had this Holocaust Museum in Skopje that we were working with. It is a fantastic institution. They have wonderful collection and wonderful exhibition and building, but archive they have and documents they have, and the contract they had with designers and the donors when they were starting the memorial center and the museum said that nothing should be presented in public. So using a digital tool, there is one solution. There are digital tools, even YouTube materials that can be reached through the closed public private links. So if you have that kind of archive or material that should not be taken out, there are links and tools, digital tools. I'm not quite engineer or programmer, but we use it for example, we used it for this institution. We created a content that is strictly closed and can be used only in a museum or with the specific link in specific environment. And programmers can do it. Some of the materials cannot be printed, downloaded, and it has this kind of watermarks or different kind of protection. So you should actually be a hell of a good hacker or a programmer to crack that kind of, so it can be helpful. There are tools.
I have a little question, Milena, thank you very much. How can we be sure that we are really designing for all? I mean, I can think about this, making the place accessible for wheelchairs, for people with visual disabilities, with hearing disabilities, but I'm always a little bit scared that I'm leaving someone out. How can we be sure of that?
Well, maybe it would be the best thing to say would be like, we could never be sure, of course, but that's why we always address to this universal design. That is something that has been developing for, I think, more than 3 decades now. And in many countries, universal design is obligatory. And designers in some countries are actually starting, when they learn about design and when they educate at the academies, they're starting from that bottom line, which is the rules, the standards of the universal design. For example, when you use a font, something that you can do, and we have them also in our tools on the Balkan Museum Access Group in publications. Never use, always use only sans serif font. That means that letters are simple without any. Never use cursive. Never use only capital letters, because it can confuse people that having any kind of reading disorder. So use the good contrast. Black surface background with white can be great. Also yellow with black can be great. Red on the black cannot never be great and good for reading. Never put letters over the image or picture you want to present. Or never put letters or subjects or titles over the archival documents, for example. So you have nice handwriting and over that you have a text. I cannot read it really. So these are some of the simple rules. Use, for example, if you have some materials that is printed, use at least 1.5 space between lines, or 2 even. But over 2 can be too hard, because people that are having some kind of concentration problem can be lost in reading this kind of text. So these are some small elements that, if you have, for example, legends, or on the site, you want to put some papers, materials, legends for people, always use enlarged print, at least 18 points font on black on the white paper. So if you want to share that some kind of easy going and easy reading material, short sentences, short, spread the pictures wide enough. So many, when you go through the materials on the internet, you have, even there are many world association in UK and in America that are promoting and educating about the universal design. So basically, when you read about it, you will kind of naturally accept that elements, because all of us need that kind of simplification. It is not making something so simple or stupid or plain. It is a design, but it is more understandable for all of us.
Thank you very, very much, Milena. I think it's been a really interesting presentation today. So big applause for you.
Thank you for inviting me, and have a successful work and successful days, and enjoy Barcelona. I envy you.
Hope to see you soon here, Milena, of course.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.